Hello again. This is Gabby, or SerenaMidori, here with another quick tutorial. Hopefully quick. Because I got some questions about how I did my animations, or how to animate them. I showed you before how to basically start making sprites, but I didn't really go into much detail about the moving parts and stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and just explain my sprites here of my character, MadGab. I have two of them right here, and I'll first explain the main one. This one right here is the main file that I made. If you look on the right here, I actually have them labeled. This main file has certain moving parts. We have the arms, which are connected, but they're separate from the rest of the pixel. This way I can have the arms moving independently of the body, but moving together still. I also have the legs as their own layer because I want them to stay static wherever they are. I made the clothes their own separate layer because in my animation I have the body moving ever so slightly, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And the head and the hat also need to be independent of each other. So keeping this in mind, when I made this pixel, when I made this sprite, I kept in mind exactly everything that I needed to be independent. So I can make things like this, turn it into this. Just by editing the face, I was able to make a simple animation. You can see where it goes over, but then you can also check here. Another quick animation, just to change the face and the arms. Now with this main pixel, I have all these different moving parts, so I can go into Photoshop and I can show you essentially what I did with these moving parts. I'm not exactly an expert in terms of animating on Photoshop. It's the only animating program that I have, and it works for me. However, I know that there is an animating application for Paint Tool SAI. I've never used it myself, but essentially it does the same thing, but you would have to save each of these frames as static images. There are other websites too that'll make animated GIFs, GIFs, whatever you prefer, for you, as long as you have the images saved. So everything that I'm doing with these frames can be replicated in other animation making programs, as long as you make them into separate images. Just to clarify. So, I can show you, this is the first panel that I have. My second panel has the body and the head moving down with the hat moving slightly up, because I want to make sure that her movements are not very sense-making. In the next panel, I make them move even further with the arms moving up to meet the head as if she's chuckling. Mostly, I just try to move where I think things should go, and I kind of experimented. Like, I had some parts where the arms jolted a bit from where they were supposed to be, and I like that a lot more than just having her bounce up and down in a regular pace. So experiment with what you think is cool, and when I press play, you can see her basic idle animation, so that she bounces. There's a slight bounce in the body itself, with the arms and head moving more so, and the hat moving kind of off-tempo from the head. Now again, I'm not any sort of animation major, but this is just something that is visually appealing to me. If you wanted to do something simple as just doing a head bobbing, that's perfectly fine, as most of the sprites in the game actually don't have that much animation. In fact, Toriel in the first part of the game doesn't have any animation. So whether or not you want to animate your sprite as much as this, or maybe as much as just having a simple, like, head turning animation, it's entirely up to you. Now for this one, I'm actually feeling a little bit experimental. I want to see how far I can get animating this mad sprite. And when I say mad, I mean mad. In terms of MadGab, she's awfully very happy, but I haven't done any attacking sprites. This is supposed to be her attack sprite, so I want to make her actions a little more sporadic, kind of like how Mettaton or Moffat moved. So the first thing I'll do is I like to make sure that my entire sprite is in a folder. You don't want it to be one static image because trying to take apart the sprite will be a pain. Having them as separate layers is ideal. So now I have each body part as a separate thing, because I want them all to move at different times. Now the first thing I'll do is change the image size. I'd like to make this clear that when I'm using this background, the way that it was made, it's actually too big for the sprite. The sprite needs to be at least 2 times bigger to fit, and as you can see, the pixels don't exactly match. The sprite is larger. So, what we do is I'm going to go and make my sprite larger, changing the dimensions of the canvas itself. But a word of warning, I do not know if Paint Tool SI can actually do this, but we need to go into Photoshop and click nearest neighbor. You want to be able to preserve the pixel edges, otherwise it's gonna turn out fuzzy and it's not gonna be what you want. So now we have our fixed size. Let's move this into here, and there we go. Now the first thing I want to do is make sure it matches up to where her original spot was. Alright, once you got your sprite where you think you want it, now I'm going to put this in the place of my current MadGap sprite and hide those. So in this one, the legs and arms are actually separated. So the right arm and the left arm are separated, and so are the right leg and the left leg, because I want them to move independently of each other. The hat, the head, and the clothes are still independent as well, so every part of it's going to be moving in some way. So what I also did in Photoshop, just to be specific, I went to Edit, went to Preferences, I went to General. Now here, under Image Interpolation, normally you'll have it under bicubic, so that when you transform things in your images, they'll be smoother. However, since we're working in pixels, we don't want that. So you're gonna click on Nearest Neighbor to preserve the hard edges. I've heard in later versions of Photoshop this doesn't work, so you'll probably just have to choose it from the options bar, which will appear up here. Now the first thing I'm gonna do is show you that in the animation frames, you'll need to open that by going to Window and clicking on Animation. Now we're just starting with our simple frame, and I don't want to do too much, so the first thing we're going to do is just move the head. And I want it to have a very simple bobbing animation, but it's going to be a little more... violent's not the word, but comparing it to the other animation that I just showed you, it's not going to be as soft or smooth. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new frame out of this one. All this does is copy over the state that these files are in. If I change the position of any files in this state, it'll show through in this frame only. So if I want to move the head down, it'll do that animation. Now that I moved it down, I would like to move it back up. So I'll do a couple frames just to show the animation I want to do. A little bit too jerky. What we want to do is have it look like it's bouncing. Alright, there we go. It's got a much more violent up and down bobbing. Now what I'd like to try is squishing the face a bit. What I'd like to try and do is have this head specifically squished down. However, if I change it to this, it's going to affect the file in all parts. So what I'm going to do is at this frame I'll make a copy. Now in each one of these I'll have to hide the copy. So hiding it at the first frame will make sure it's not visible. Not until we get to this frame, where we do want it to be visible, only for this split second. Now we'll squish it, just to give it a little more of a animation oomph. And we'll hide this head, only until we get to this next frame in which the head will be visible again. Let's try it. Good. Looks more like it's bouncing. However, right here we can do the same thing. Make another copy, hide it through all the frames at the beginning frame, and then only show this one, where instead I would like it to be a little more elongated and short on the sides, so it looks like it's jumping. Let's try this. There we go. Now we can edit it however we need to. Now that we got that done, using just these 6 frames as a basic animation, I'd like to make the arms and legs and hat and body move independently of the head. I would like the arms to move up whenever the head actually hits down. So let's start there. I would like the right arm to go up. And we'll pick a specific angle. So let's do -20. That way we're consistent. And we'll do the same thing with the left arm as well, but with a +20. Trying to make it match up as best as I can. There we go. Now we have our matching arms. However, I did make the mistake that I actually told you not to do before, which was not to move the things until you made copies of them. Oh, I just got rid of that animation, didn't I? Okay, hello, yet again, friends. So, I deleted the progress I just did to try and fix the mistake that I made. Hope you all caught it. Make sure that you create copies of your layers before you modify them, because if you don't, you'll modify the whole thing, and then you'll accidentally click on your history and erase everything, and have to start again. On the bright side, look at this smooth animation. Look how bouncy it is. Isn't it great? Okay, let's continue with what I was trying to do with the arms. Now, the first things first is I'm going to duplicate these layers, because I need duplicates of these layers, and I'll hide them on the first frame so that they can be used later. I'd like them to be moved down here, so I'm actually going to make another copy for each of them. Note that for each different animation that you do in terms of scaling, you're going to need another layer for that. Because if you affect the scaling of one of the layers, it'll affect it throughout the entire animation. And if that's what you would like, then good for you. But unfortunately, that's not how Photoshop works here. So, on this frame, I'd actually like them to be bent down a little bit. So I'm going to show these copied arms instead. And what I'll do is I'll take one of these copied arms, skew it so it's to the sides. I'll do that with the same thing on the other side. Doesn't have to be perfect. I was using degrees earlier, but at this point I'm just gonna eyeball it. Alright, so now we have our 2 arms. Now we'd like to show these new arms from this panel up until we get to the head squishing layer, in which case we actually want to show these arms, and these are the ones we're going to squish up through the air, a little bit like this. And then the next one, show the regular arms again. Until we get back to here. Let's see how it looks. Not very smooth. At this point, what I would recommend, if you're going to do something like this, you want to smooth out the animation, just make more layers, and I'll do that real quick. Alright, this animation's looking a little bit better now. Definitely as crazy as I was hoping it would look. Now the next thing I'd like to do I'd actually like each leg to stomp one at a time. So what I'll do is I'll duplicate all of these layers. So now the entire animation will be 12 frames long instead of 6. So it'll loop through it twice. If I only loop through it once here, you'll see it loops twice. Okay, so now the first one, I'll animate the first leg. Now what I did here was just simply making the frames for this animation. Now I'll cover up the other ones that we don't need yet. The first frame will start here. So we'll change the right leg to this one. Then we'll change to this one. And on this downbeat, I want the body to stretch a bit. Actually, I think we might be able to get the same effect just by moving it. So to save on time. Let's see how it looks. That is stomping. Let's see. I want everything to stomp down just a little more on the downbeat of the step. I'm actually going to make one more copy of each leg to be shorter. Actually, I won't need to avoid all the unnecessary. On this frame, we'll replace these with these. Since they're already shorter, we'll move everything down. Alright, let's see it. Alright, it's very quick and very jolting. You know, the first thing we want to fix is that we want the hat to stay in the air. So now it's time to animate the hat. I'm going to simply do motion for this one. Alright, let's see it. A little bit jerky there as well. Let's fix that up. Alright, now we have our very cartoony, bouncy animation. Now I said I wasn't gonna do it, but I think I will add some squash to the hat very quickly. Alright, I'm liking that a lot. So, I guess we could consider this animation done. Zooming out, you can see it just kind of looks like a normal screen. I don't have any text just yet. We could change that. Let's see. The reason I also like to use Photoshop files for these screenshots is because you can change the text as well. Whereas in a Paint Tool side, you don't exactly get that privilege. And there you go. This is how I would animate something a little more complex than the last one I did. It took me a little bit of trial and error as well, as you can see from this very lovely tutorial. So I would really just recommend you play around with something until it looks good. And don't let yourself beat yourself down by limitations, if you have to use any GIF making sites, or if you have to save these all as individual pictures. It's easier with frames, but it's not impossible, so I would say go for it. If you want to, go ahead and make it. Nobody's stopping you. I mean, unless, like, Toby doesn't want us to do this. I mean, there's not really a reason. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this again, and if you have any other ideas on how to do this sort of thing, please put them in the comments or tweet them at me so I can retweet them for other people. I know that my methods are not the only methods out there, trust me. I may not even be the person you should be listening to, but it's a start. And if you have any other questions or have ideas for other tutorials that we can explore in terms of sprites or just drawing in general, just let me know and I'll try and do my best. Thanks for watching, everyone.